Let there be light.
Shining, shimmering, glowing. My favorite art has lighting to tell a story by guiding my eyes and lighting up my neurons. Today I'll show you how I intensify the glow in my digital artwork on Clip Studio Paint through playing with 3 key fundamentals. The first fundamental is value, which is the darkness or lightness of a tone. There is no light without darkness, and the contrast and transitions between the two will help you develop form and depth. I like to simplify values to 5 levels, including my base color, a darker midtone, and my darkest shadow, and then a lighter midtone and highlights before adjusting and blending the hard and soft edges in rendering. Here's my subject, which is an office worker doing the cobra arms. I'll start out under even lighting, focusing on building shadows first throughout the canvas before placing areas of light. You can do this through manually selecting your values or through a multiply layer blending mode where you can add shadows and blend the color from the top layer to the bottom layer. The multiply layer is also good for when you want to apply cast shadows as well. You can also experiment with these layer types for different shadow intensities, or adjust the intensity by changing the opacity of the shadow layer. I'll apply my shadow multiply layer broadly across the canvas and then carve out areas where it's transitioning to the base or midtones by erasing with either a soft or a hard brush. But you can also be more exact with where you're rendering through clipping masks. You can use clipping masks by pressing this button, which will create a boundary to where you can and cannot mark based on the marks of the existing layer right below it that you're clipping, almost like a coloring book.
Okay, class, let's stay within the lines.
Get out! What a relief!
Once I have the form developed, I'll further develop the lighting environment by thinking about where the light is coming from. In this situation, I want to have a flashlight type of lighting in a dark room, so again, I'll cover the whole canvas with shadow using a multiply layer and carve out where the light would be by erasing with a soft airbrush, and then further darkening areas of shadow where it would show because of the direction of the light. After developing dark values and progressing lighter to midtones through erasing, I can finally drop the highlights. Within grayscale, you can also lighten by selecting the value in a normal layer or using other blending types like lighten, and these other blending layers. To strengthen that glow in the values, I'll use an airbrush to lighten the values surrounding the highlights with soft edges to give the look of light emanating from the brightest highlights to develop an ambiance in the background. There are 2 more helpful layer types that magnify that glow effect, which are glow dodge and color dodge, as they amplify the next key fundamental. Saturation, which is the intensity of color ranging from the pure color to gray. Saturation will typically peak at the terminator, where you can see an object's true color as light is transitioning into shadow, and will slowly become more muted as it gets lighter towards white or darker towards black. For more realistic paintings, that arc of saturation is more subtle, but for more cartoony pictures, you can make the changes in saturation more dramatic to make your art pop more. As a rule of thumb, under even lighting, make sure your shadows are very desaturated gray tones and your brightest highlights reach a very muted color, with low value close to white that is surrounded by more saturated midtones. To capture that saturation effect, to transition from your brightest highlights, you can take a soft brush or airbrush, set your layer to glow dodge or color dodge, and put your color picker to any color outside of pure black, white, or gray, and add that intense highlight to the background of dark values. But there are other situations outside of even lighting where you can shift the saturation based on the bounce light and the color of the primary light source. First, bounce light is a less intense light compared to the main light source that reflects light from the environment. With bounce light, you can color what would typically be the shadow side into a slightly lighter value of the object with the color of the environment. For example, on a normal sunny day with a blue sky, your environment is reflecting a blue bounce light into objects. Second, when your primary light source is colored like in neon lighting environments, You may shift from having highlights that are closer to white to more saturated highlights of the color. In the case where there is only one colored light source, the highlight can be the most saturated hue, with the tone being progressively desaturated as you get to shadow. In the case of two neon lights on different sides, each side would be illuminated by the color of each light. The transition to each light in the shadows and Terminator midtones would be more desaturated towards gray as both of the colored lights mix together. After talking about different ways the saturation can change because of different light colors, we can talk about the last fundamental to illuminate your art. Hue is the color of a tone and can be split between warm and cool colors. Each color has a complementary color from each side of the temperature spectrum, like blue and orange or green and red. As an initial rule of thumb, you want to use complementary colors together, or at least have a good ratio of warm to cool colors, and build those hue shifts as you transition from shadow to light. For example, if you generally have cool shadows like a blue hue, you can make your highlights pop stronger by incorporating a complementary warm color. For example, I'm making my cool blue shirt stand out with this warmer red and yellowish green in the skin and warmer yellowish green in the background. And in between, I also like to go across the center of the color wheel from each complementary color and make use of desaturated grays in my shadows to make that smooth shift in hues. Adding more hue shifts, you can also go one step deeper to amplify the luminosity of your art by adding iridescence that can be found naturally in things like soap bubbles and the inside of seashells that change its color depending on the angle you view it at. Typically, when using more saturated colors, it's difficult to put too many colors together, but again, by desaturating colors and maintaining the values across different colors, I can actually shift across multiple hues, which will give that iridescent effect. Let's reset the lighting scenario for the subject to outdoors, where the light is coming from above instead of directly behind the person, to demonstrate. One way I learned how to add iridescence is through the YouTuber Fengzao, where you duplicate a layer twice and put one layer through a gradient map before setting the color mode to soft light, and then taking the second duplicate layer below it and experimenting with the color curves. Overall, I like to think of the hue shifts as a holographic effect that makes my art shimmer as you shift the angle of the subject. When you mix with the previous fundamentals, the hue shifts intensify that glow effect. To summarize, you can make your art glow using value, saturation, and hue shifts. You can do this by developing dark desaturated values to surround highlights with soft edges of highlights around it that can either be saturated most in the Terminator under even lighting, or the highlight under colored lighting. To achieve extra glow through iridescence, you can shift your hues with multiple desaturated colors that are close to each other within the color wheel. After implementing these lighting methods into your digital art process, I hope your artwork can get that extra glow. Happy painting! I'm a self-taught artist that likes to learn new art techniques in my goal of creating manga and illustrations. So if you'd like to join me on my art journey, feel free to subscribe and check out my other videos here on topics including cell shading and converting grayscale to color. In addition, if you like my art, you can also support me by purchasing my prints through my imprint store, linked below. Thanks for watching.